For people that are interested in so-called free energy devices, one of the things you can look up is the Joe cell. It's very interesting stuff. It's something you can work at home without too much trouble. It's not that complicated and it's not that expensive to put together. There's good videos on Joe cells and so on. Do a little digging, a little bit of research, because some of it comes from 15 or 20 years ago when, you know, camera, video, and internet wasn't as prolific as it is today. Brown's gas is another very interesting material. Brown's gas is technically called HHO rather than H2O, and it was developed by a fellow called Yul Brown, who was an expatriate Ukrainian who went to Australia in the 70s, and he built these Brown's gas machines to generate a gas for welding. A Brown's gas flame is red rather than a conventional flame. It's about 260 degrees. You can pass your hand quickly through it. But yet when you turn this flame onto any material, you can literally weld any material to any material. You can weld a brick to a copper pipe. You can weld a piece of stainless steel to a flagstone. You can weld any kind of dissimilar metal to a different dissimilar metal. And you can also take things like a block of tungsten and you can turn this 260 degree flame onto the tungsten and it will melt at 10,000 degrees. Brown's gas is not fully understood yet, but it is a very interesting material. The Joe cells, we know, can produce Brown's gas, and Ormus develops as part of that process. Joe cells would run for a period of time, and they start by generating hydrogen gas. And then there's a process that they call seeding. And not all of them do this. When you get it going properly, it starts to do this, and it produces what they call Brown's gas. And after a while, it starts to form a white material on the inside of the cylinders. And for years, they would just take the cylinders apart, clean them out, and put them back together again. But one of the guys that worked with these things for a number of years and then became involved in Ormus has kind of put two and two together. And it appears that the white material forming inside the Joe cell is actually Ormus. Exactly which compounds we don't know yet, or I don't know yet because I haven't had a chance to work with these. But it is an ormic material. So it appears that the possible interdimensional aspects of this Ormus, when it recurs in these other principles, looks like it is somehow a critical element or series of elements to some type of interdimensionality, to the power grid, to the 0 point. We're not exactly certain, but it keeps recurring and it keeps showing up, and we know that it has photonic responses. So it's definitely a key element of this. So understanding this stuff a little bit and playing around with it a little bit, then sooner or later we're going to get this all figured out. And you guys, we need help. There's lots of us working on it, but we need lots and lots of help, and we need lots of new ideas and so on. But all these things are interlinked, and they're part of our construction, part of our psyche, and part of our interest for the future, and part of our energy for the future. And there's lots of fun to be had here. When David Hudson was doing his experimentation to get his U.S. patent for the production of Ormus gold from gold, the word superconductivity was in the patent. That was passed to the military. The military started putting roadblocks in front of them because they wanted more information, and they did this through the patent office. So what happened was they said they wanted absolute precise weights and measures on this material. He was working with a dry gold powder which would absorb moisture from the atmosphere and so on. So they had to set up a machine with a weigh scale in the machine, a controlled environment, so that they could heat and cool this material and record weights and changes and so on. So what they did is they put 100 grams into the machine. They would heat this up at 2 Celsius degrees per minute until it went through a phase change at 700 degrees. And what happened is the weight changed to about, I think, 130, 140 grams. So they thought, this is strange, let's cool it back down. So they cooled it back down 2 Celsius degrees per minute. When they got back to the start point, their 100-gram sample now weighed 56 grams. All right? So they said, all right, well, we'll heat it up again and see what happens. So off they go and they heat this thing up again. This time when it passed its phase change, the weight went to 300 odd grams. So then they said, cool the thing down again. They cooled it down again and they brought it back to where they started. And when they got back there, it passed 56 grams and the sample stabilized at 20 grams. Now all you're doing is heating and cooling and somehow the weight's changing. So they said, all right, let's heat this stuff up again. They heated it up again. The third time that it went through the phase change, it went to a few thousand grams. They cooled it down the next time, and they watching this thing through the thing. The sample went 56 grams down to 20 grams, and as it approached zero, the sample went invisible, and the weight continued to descend until it was negative 20 grams in this closed environment. Now, they were kind of scratching their heads here, and one of the fellas said, look, let's put a little stir pattern with a glass rod, and let's see what we've got, and we'll heat it up again and see if it reappears. So they did this, and they heated it up, and the material did reappear again, but it reappeared without the swirl pattern to it. So obviously the material wasn't still there and invisible. What had happened, the only conclusion they can come up with is that this material went transdimensional. It simply left and came back again. Now, American, or whatever, scientists in general consider something with these peculiar behavior patterns, they call it exotic matter. There's a lot of allusions to this, but they really don't know what it is, or at least they don't tell us they know what it is.
So they just call it exotic matter, and they kind of just, oh yeah, it's exotic, we can't really explain
yeah,
what
we
this
put it on the
is.
shelf, it doesn't explain anything. What
just
are we going to do with
this? Just like junk DNA, you know? It's
well, so... Exactly. Nature does not produce junk.
It's
very simple. All this extra DNA has a function. We just
don't know what it is. Oh yeah.
At least not yet. But
yeah.
Nature wastes nothing. Nature produces no junk, ever. But anyway, when you have a few billion years of honing and modifying, you get it right.
And weren't you saying that there is an Ormic version of every single element?
We believe that there is an Ormic version of every single element because the Ormic version is the different state of matter. It's the energized state of any elemental material where it sheds its outer electron ring, and we believe it goes into a high spin state, perhaps millions of times per second, and we believe the atom itself deforms. It narrows and becomes elongated. We believe that's the model for the Ormic material, and in that form it is not chemically bondable because it no longer has an excess or shortage of electrons. It behaves as an inert gas. Same sort of characteristics. However, in people and animals and plants, it works as a governance and regulatory control material. That's what it seems to be doing. So it's important we maintain our levels of it because of the artificiality of our environment. And if we can do this, eventually, hopefully, it provides clearer minds and we can solve some of these other problems that are tending to fog our minds